Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours, where we discuss media and technology 7 days a week. Let's go ahead and jump into the questions. Bill, what do we got?
Paul Wallace starts us off this morning from Austin, Texas. Paul wonders, the bandwidth failure on extra hours I had was inexplicable. It was not Spectrum. I had 5 years of being on panels for after hours, office hours, extra hours.
I think you're on a different pane there. I don't see that question.
Oh, really?
Sure.
Oh, God, you're right. Okay, yeah. Sorry about that. Craig Kadokia from Toronto is starting us off. What do the panelists think of this corridor view video of in-camera effects and the problem that these skills are disappearing from modern filmmaking? What else are we at risk of losing? And he's got a YouTube link there.
I'll go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, it's an interesting video. I watched this yesterday. I saw it. It came across and this one is on forced perspective, and they recreate something that was used in Lord of the Rings that Peter Jackson did, this a forced perspective, but this one actually is unusual. You just have one person, like the person on the left, sitting further away, and the person on the right sitting closer, and use a wide-angle lens. And you change their eye lines so they look like they're looking at each other across the table. But the trick in this particular video is the camera moves, it dollies. And so that's normally something you can't do with forced perspective. And forced perspective was used way back in Darby O'Gill and the Little People and a lot of the old movies to generate big people and small people in the same shot. And they accomplished this by actually using motion control to move the people opposite the parallax so that the parallax stays the same as the camera moves to do this illusion. Of course, it's something you couldn't do without a computer, and so they didn't have that in the old days, and a lot of these in-camera visual effects have disappeared. It always amazes me that when I see a movie, like I was watching The Absent-Minded Professor the other day, came on, nice high-def transfer on the Disney Channel. And there's scenes where the Model T goes by the camera, takes off, and goes up into the sky. And you see it's a full-size Model T. You see the shadow of it falling on the trees. And you're going, they must have had that thing on somehow. They couldn't paint out the wires. This was the 1960s. How did they do that? Lifted on a crane and were able to hide the wires well enough that you don't see them even in a high-def transfer. And the basketball game with a lot of wire work with, bounding basketball players going 20 feet up into the top of the gym. How did they do that with wires and not have the wires visible in the high-def transfer? A lot of those, a lot of the visual effects were done by magicians in the early day. Méliès used a lot of magic tricks and a lot of camera cuts to conceal, to make things look interesting. So a lot of illusions from magic came in. But those are all disappearing because we've all opted into visual effects can fix everything and make everything look nice. And now, with generative AI, it can even make up people from scratch that look perfectly believable. So, yep, those techniques are lost.
I think that a lot of in-camera stuff does look better. I'm doing a lot of 3D stuff right now, and people look at it and they're like, "Wow, this looks a lot better than anything I've seen in 3D." And I'm like, "Yeah, because it's all real. Like it's two cameras, and it's optical, and and it's all higher frame rate, which makes it." There's a problem with motion blur in 24 frames a second as it relates to 3D. so outside of that, there's it took me a little while to realize when I was doing higher frame rate that that's why that doesn't work. so anyway,
can't do forced perspective in 3D either. That's the
you can't. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I think that I was I traded some emails with, and I know some folks that have worked with Yaron Orbach, who is the director of photography for Begin Again and Sing Street, two of my daughter's favorite movies, and I've seen them quite a few times as a result. And one of the things that he's really focused on is not, when you talk to people who have worked with him, that he doesn't want a lot of lights. He doesn't want a lot of overhead. He wants things to be as close to the ground as possible. He still lights things, but it really is minimalistic. He doesn't want any marks for the actors. Like, you kind of know what you need to do, and we need to be fluid enough to, react to what you're going to do in the scene. And it just creates a much more believable feel to the whole thing, because there's not people aren't thinking about something else. People aren't trying to make something work. People aren't trying to work around things. So I think that even beyond the in-camera visual effects is is just how do we find an authentic performance, from somebody and not encumber them more than they have to. And we find that a lot with events, where if we create a ton of a ton of cues and a ton of things that the speaker has to do, it splits their mind, and they're thinking about the logistics instead of just the message. And so really the more we can get back to, it not being about that. I think that's one of the things when people see a unplugged and they find that it's, sometimes more intimate and more authentic than a regular stage show. It's partially because they're not thinking about all the other things they have to think about. They're just able to sing. So anyway, it's just so I think that there's an authenticity. I don't know how quickly AI. I mean, I thought Sora was really cool when it came out, but I haven't opened it for weeks. Like it wasn't something. And I think that there's this kind of sugar high that you get from the AI stuff that is really fun. I don't know if I just don't know how. I don't know how long it'll take for AI to create something meaningful. Like, I just don't know if that's going to happen as fast as people think it will. I see a lot of stuff that looks really realistic, but I don't see stuff that I feel like I need to watch again. So it's interesting. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Andy Kokendorfer in Viera, Florida. And Andy wonders, hopefully no one here has been using the NanoKVM. It's been listening to you. And he has a long cite there from a Tom's Hardware site about what's going on.
I go, Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of many reasons why, and here's the article, why I recommend, at the very least, name brand recognized companies, because security problems come from two fronts. They come from malicious intent, and it's not clear if that's the case. And I'll just roll down where you can see that they show their little microphone in this thing. Now, that seems intentional, but there's plenty of IoT devices and other things where they're just slapping code libraries they find to get a product out the door as quickly, as inexpensively as they can. And you can end up with a ton of security problems that are not intentional, but just they're never going to be found, and they don't care. And now this looks deliberate, and that's a problem. They say now it's been patched, but this is why I got to watch out for this stuff.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, this has been a long known thing with the NanoKVM and the, as Jeff mentioned, the manufacturer, Cyped, I don't know how you pronounce it. They mentioned that they're going to eventually open source things, but that still hasn't happened. So if you're looking at products like this, I would consider going through the PyKVM route. Or if you're willing to spend a bit more, go with the Comet from GLINet. The PyKVM, fully open source. You can build your own hardware or buy pre-made hardware. They've been working great. The Comet, I haven't had my hands on it yet, but folks that in the community that have used it, I know are very happy with them.
Go, Jason.
This is a perfect example to share one of my maxims, which is if your TV has a microphone, it's listening to you. Do not connect your television to the internet. It's not smart, it's not capable, and it is absolutely monetizing anything it can.
I was just watching a thing with an ex-CIA agent talking about the fact that the some of the tools that were released 10 years ago were that the fact that they can, if you have a TV, they have things in there that can turn the speakers of your TV into a microphone while it's still operating, and be able to record what's in your room, and that's being hacked and built into the system. You should not plug your TV into the internet. Now, go ahead, Courtney.
Well, that kind of negates what I was going to say, because if you find yourself nervous about this and you find a microphone, a pair of diagonal cutters works nicely to remove that microphone from the motherboard. Or if you
what else is in there, Courtney? What else is in there?
You don't want to go crazy. A little drop of super glue in the mic hole also works. That can soothe your fears, assuage your fears.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Scott Pulsifer in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. For a non-technical user on Zoom, what preamp and mic would you suggest to materially improve their audio at a $1,000 US budget and a $2,000 US budget? Very easy. No MixPre menus. Thanks.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, $1,000 US. If it's just this is just for a Zoom, standard Zoom meeting setup, $1,000 US is quite a good budget. It's quite a generous budget, but if you have that budget, we're here to spend it for you. So what I would look at the $1,000 mark range would probably be an Audio Technica 4050. If you want another option for that, I'd probably look at the Neumann TLM 102. And pair that with an SSL2 Mark II audio interface. I like the SSL2 for this use case because there is no need for any software. Every single knob and button does one thing. You don't have to go to different modes and click, 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 click. If you need something done, there's a button specifically for that. And Harshid here, I believe you're using the first generation of the SSL2, and maybe Harshid could speak later about it. If you want to move up to the $2,000 mark in terms of microphones, I'd probably look at the Neumann TLM 49, which is the slightly smaller fat brother or sibling of the Neumann M49. If you want to perhaps consider a small diaphragm condenser microphone, I am a big fan of the Sennheiser MKH50. Standard interior dialogue microphone, sounds amazing, sounds wonderful. It has a slight emphasis in the high end and low end, little sparkle on the high end and low end. But it sounds really nice and crispy and rich in a flattering way on most voices. You might also want to consider the SSL2 Plus for the interface. The advantage here is you can have an additional Q mix bus, so an additional monitoring bus. So if you want to send a different set of signals or a different mix to a different output, that's possible with the 2 Plus. But for a simple Zoom setup, even the standard SSL2 is sufficient for that.
Go ahead, Harshid. I can't hear you, Harshid.
Okay, so SSL will definitely give you that analog feel with everything being on knobs or faders. The other piece, I would say, the 421 from Sennheiser, if you're trying to pick up microphones specifically, RE20, the Shure SM7B or SM7DB are great microphones to pair up with anything, and depending on your range. The S Solo, as Bill is using, is also a great piece of gear because you could get the Cedar plug-in. It's about $500, and I think with the $175 Cedar plug-in, you're sitting right around $700 as a total. So if you pair up any of the microphones as mentioned, and the other piece is also buy good cabling. Buying cheap cables is probably just a waste of your great gear. So Mogami cables are definitely a good choice of cabling and to go with your good gear. Cheers.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, and I just want to mention that the question asks specifically for a preamp, and at someone who doesn't want to complicate things, I would not get a standalone preamp to add to an audio interface. I would go with what we have been suggesting, that which is using the preamp built into an audio interface like the SSL2. I would have to push back on what Harshid said regarding the Solo, the Universal Audio Apollo line is a very, very nice and very capable and great sounding line of audio interfaces, but it does need quite a bit of routing and setup to get it dialed in for something as simple as Zoom.
Yeah, for me, it's not a matter of the components. The components all sound great in a perfect environment. I have a pretty loud room that you don't hear, and that's because of noise assist. And so and a mic with a lot of off-axis rejection. So I use an SM7B with a MixPre 3 with noise assist. That would be under $2,000. When I travel, I use a DPA 4066 with a MixPre 3 with noise assist. I would not use anything else at this point. Next question.
Next one comes from Gordon Lake in Los Angeles, California. How does the Hollyland Lyra webcam compare to other webcams? And he's got a link to it.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I have not tried this. I just took a look at the specs on it. It's a 4K camera. It has a couple of unique features in that it has, it has a lot of things that 4K webcams have these days, which is face tracking and the ability to pull a 1080p image out of the 4K and track you around and do a zoom in. It has noise cancellation. The microphone that is built into it is a little MEMS mic that's here in the front. I don't know how good the quality of the microphone will be, but it does interface with their Lyric wireless mics, so you can directly pair one of their Bluetooth or 2.4 gigahertz wireless mics with it so that you could put that on if you're going to be walking around. It'll give you a lot better audio presentation, supposedly. And it has AI tuning, woo, whatever that means. So I haven't tried it yet, but it looks interesting for it's $149 for a 4K webcam. So it looks like something could be investigated.
Go ahead, Jason.
It's certainly a step up from your laptop webcam. The video that's attached kind of lost all credibility for me when I skimmed to this. And what it shows is the Sony FX3 is saying, $5,000. And it turns out if you are incorrectly exposed and strangely lit, the FX3 definitely doesn't look as good as this $149 webcam.
Next question.
Next question comes from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. The bandwidth failure on extra hours I had was inexplicable, not spectrum. In 5 years of being on panels for after hours, office hours, extra hours, and the rundown, I've never had a bandwidth failure like this. Cause and how to avoid.
A good guy.
Yeah, we've been seeing quite a few of the folks that jump on the panel have some little anomalies lately, and it's helpful to get. I'm glad this question is here because it's helpful for all of our viewers listening. One of the things that you can do if you have a business account is you can really get to the bottom of it with a granular dashboard, which I'm about ready to show you here in a second. But before we look at that, really think end to end. The people that show up here every day, they do this all the time. And so when you say, I've been doing this for 5 years, and then you just pop in all of a sudden and say, hey, I want to be on the panel, it's one of those things where tech check, hopefully they can iron you out and check your stats. So in the pre-show of this show, we see, and sorry, Alex, if this is getting too much Sunday stuff, but in the pre-show here, people check your bandwidth before you come onto the stage. And in extra hours, we don't have the full infrastructure. So you don't get that blessing of the folks, and thank you to those guys who get up every day to do that. So I'm going to jump over here to a meeting, and our friend Jack Zeffers, who's on Starlink, was nice enough to jump into this other meeting. So I'm going to cut over to that meeting, and my audio may be a little, I have to turn my head so it may be a little low. So this is Zach in a meeting, and you can already tell down here in the bottom left that we're seeing that he's got some bandwidth issues. Now I'm an admin on this account for these bots. So this is the bots meeting. If you Google office hours Zoom test, you could jump into this meeting. You can't turn your camera on in the way that we have it set up, but I allowed Zach to turn his camera on. And here in the back end, we get, I turned off his IP address, so he's safe here. He won't, I turned off there's some settings here where you can turn off what you can see. So Zach, don't be afraid. I'm not going to expose you. But here you can see audio quality good, video good. But where it gets crazy is, right now I'm on the video tab, but here's how much granular data you get. If you click on video, you can see packet loss, latency, jitter, bandwidth. And the crazy thing is you can see it over time. And this is a live meeting, but I can go back in time. So the meeting that we use for extra hours is Grant's meeting. And he could actually go back and he could see if you were on Wi-Fi and what was going on with your Wi-Fi. Here's the video receiving over time. So I could see exactly where the drop-off hits took place. And so when you say it wasn't Spectrum, my first thing is, all right, if it wasn't Spectrum, then can we go look at your CPU? So in here, I could actually go and look at the strength of his computer, and I could see over time what was going on with his machine. So what did you have going on your machine, and was it taking up any more resources? So that's the Zoom backend. And now the other thing, I know you have a Dream machine, which gives you even more logs, so you can go in and you can check those. And I'm sure Mickey will dive in with some more things because he was actually helping Paul out.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, Paul reached out earlier today for me. asking to see like if I can take a look at if there's any signs in his dream machine, and just to give people a background of what Paul's network is like in Cedar Creek. His connection is a cable connection from a copper cable connection from what do you call this, a Spectrum, which has 1 gig down and 40 megabits up, which is quite limiting. And just to put things even more into perspective, at any given point in time, he usually has anywhere from 90 to 130, 140 clients connected in that network, with about 50 guests connected to that network, because Paul runs a rental, a bed and breakfast kind of rental business, along with around 40 Internet of Things devices. And that's certainly especially given just 40 megabits up, that's quite a stretch for that. At that point in time, it would have been evening in Cedar Creek, so people are coming home and using the internet. But that's one data point. Another data point is looking at the logs in the Dream Machine. We see here at around the time of extra hours, the 8th of December at 7 p.m. Cedar Creek time, Texas time, there was a report from the Dream Machine saying that WAN 1 Spectrum on port 9 was experiencing high latency. And if we take a look here, I just took a small screenshot. There's a lot of logs stating packet loss, high latency with this internet connection from Spectrum. That's just a second data point. And then looking here at, again, around the same time as extra hours, there was a client using quite a bit of bandwidth with SharePoint. I believe that's a Microsoft service. This is just one of the clients. There were a lot of other clients that were taking up bandwidth at that given point in time, including a lot of people streaming Netflix and YouTube and stuff like that. So there are it's hard to pinpoint exactly what was causing that specific issue. It may most likely be a mixture of all of these things happening all at once. But one of the solutions that I propose to Paul is perhaps we do have a limit in bandwidth usage for the guest VLAN. I propose even limiting that, making that limit even tighter for the guest VLAN, as well as in the Unify internet application. There is a way to set a specific SLA level for any one of the WAN ports, and currently Paul has Spectrum as his primary internet connection, along with a T-Mobile 5G modem as his secondary WAN. Then you can specify even more granularly at what point does it fail over to T-Mobile. Now, I wouldn't recommend using that connection for being on a show for contribution, but those are just a couple of ways where things can be tightened up for this specific use case. Well, just know that he would have to sacrifice the experience of his guests in his network.
Good guy.
Man, I feel like Sherlock Holmes here. We're like with the magnifying glass going after the data points here. It's like, I love this community. I mean, things like this, it's like we're truly being helpful here and getting to the bottom of it. So you could see what happened on the network side. Now, I have the same Dream Machine. I learned this trick from Grant, which is if you have two internets and you have IoT devices, one, put them on a VLAN, but the other thing is to do policy-based routing. So you could say, hey, all these other folks, you're on my backup internet, so send all those other guests to the T-Mobile connection, and you could specify either their devices or that VLAN, and you get super granular. So hopefully that helps. I mean, we're all jumping on Zoom with different folks, and we don't know what's going on in their network. This is a prime example of where somebody's trying to point a finger somewhere, and it's just like, well, let's get to what the truth is. And now we've uncovered a little bit more with the data points.
Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, with regards to like pushing all guests over to the T-Mobile, there's a lot of guests, and also the T-Mobile plan is not an unlimited plan. There is a cap on it, so I don't know if that's something that Paul would want to blow through in 30 minutes.
I believe that you can give a port, I mean, with the right switches and so on and so forth, a port priority over everything else, at least a VLAN that protects at least, let's just say 15 megs a second, where you just say this port, whatever's plugged into this one, you don't have to turn everything else off. Whatever else is happening, there's a VLAN, and this port gets 15 megs a second. No matter what, it's getting 15 megs a second, and that is separated out, and everybody else can share the other 25 megs a second. The reality is when you have a lot of guests, 25 megs doesn't sound like much, but unless they're doing SharePoint, which is what you saw at about the same time, and uploading a file, most likely they were uploading some kind of file, document, something else at the same time. But outside of that, most people don't, the average person doesn't need a lot of up speed. So they can be watching Netflix and, doing all the other things they want to do, and it won't, 1 gig is plenty. But I think carving out 15 megs on its own VLAN probably is the direction. But what we would do is I'd make it very port specific. Like this is the computer that has it. I have two computers here on my network, that my wife's computer, because she does events, and my computer, that have their own bandwidth. So they, and they don't share it with the rest of the house. Now I have a lot more bandwidth too. I have 300 up. So yeah, go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I was just going to say, for those SharePoint type things, sometimes those are backups that actually occur during prime hours. So just go double check that your SharePoint backups and your Google Cloud and all that stuff is not occurring during your working hours. And that's something that I've seen on networks where it's just like, what are you doing? You're slowing down all your users during the prime time. Like that stuff can happen at midnight.
And this is why I never, ever, ever have anything that does an auto backup, like an auto sync to the cloud. Because I just never know what I'm going to be doing, and suddenly it just gets locked down into this mess. Dropbox, Google Drive, SharePoint. I don't use any of those because I'd rather keep. I have them all. I don't let them do the shared drive because I don't want it to be talking back and forth. I do have an iCloud, but iCloud seems to be pretty good at staying in the background. If you start doing anything on your computer, iCloud just backs off. Next question.
Caleb Groom in Pinehurst, North Carolina is up next. Is the Blackmagic Design Micro Studio 4K still the best choice in the $1,100 US range for a camera with SDI out and interchangeable lenses?
I'll go, Jason.
The Micro Studio 4K is based on those specific constraints. This is the first generation with a relatively long lens, but based on those constraints, it's pretty good. Really, its absolute superpower is being incredibly small and being able to be shaded in the switcher, and working very, very nicely into the Blackmagic universe. But if you really have a hard cut at 1100, maybe Guy has an idea, but I don't think you can beat it for 1100.
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, we went down this path when we were designing the one-button studio, and we needed a camera that we could control remotely, and that was on the list. But as we dug into it, we chose the BGH1 because there are so many more things that you can control remotely that you cannot control on a BMD Micro Studio camera. I mean, maybe with the REST API, they've changed something new in the last year or so, but in the time that we were checking, I would go BGH1.
What couldn't you control?
Iris, shutter speed, white balance, all these little granular things, gain. What else was there? Zoom on those lenses, because we put in the stock kit lens so we could control zoom. And then I think we could restart the thing too. So there was just a number of control focus. So there was just a number of things that we wanted to control from the far end, and we could do it with a Micro Studio camera.
Yeah, it's funny. There's I think it's an S6 or S8 control on these micro, which we've actually used, and it's the controller protocol for the for model airplanes,
RC cars.
On RC cars, and we've sat there and it does zoom and focus and all kinds of other stuff. It's just a funny thing to be grabbing onto the controller and controlling your camera with it. But you can anything that'll manage that protocol. Now, I think the question also, Caleb, is what are you using it for? So I have owned a lot of Micro Studios. I'm probably going to buy for a project that I'm working on. We're probably going to, before the end of the year, probably get over 30 of them. So we're definitely use them. Now we're doing some work on them so that they won't be exactly the way they were when they came out of the factory. But they're very, very compact and very useful for the kind of thing that we do. So I do like them a lot. But if you're using them as a web camera, I still would say if you're doing an SDI out, you're trying to put it somewhere far off in the distance and you want to control it in the set, so not necessarily remote from another place like Guy's talking about, but somewhere in the building. We find that these micros are really, really useful. We put them in little cages and we put them up high in all kinds of places, and they've been super useful. If you're looking for a web camera, at that price range, I'd still lean towards a Sony EV10 or ZV-E10. It's a slightly bigger chip, and the autofocus is going to be better. So that's going to be something to think about there. Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas is back with this. Can panelists do demos of how to do a static screen capture and a video with sound screen capture on a Mac, Command-Shift-5, and on a PC, Windows key plus Shift plus S, using the native tools and any other add-on tools they've discovered?
We'll make this pretty quick because I think you already know how to do it because you just told us how to do it. So we'll do this real fast. Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, there's those, as you described, those just do a single screen capture. But if you really want to get a complex, there's a tool that comes on Windows that's called Snipping Tool, and I just saw now that it'll actually capture video or stills. So take a look at that Snipping Tool, and it's very deep, like Camtasia.
Right, Jeff.
The static is pretty easy and obvious, and I'll just show this real quick. The problem really comes from trying to do video, and the video actually is easy. So I'll just show here real quick. This is just the Apple help. So now a couple tips I've learned. If you're fortunate enough to have more than one monitor, if you can put the screen capture on a second monitor, you can get the whole thing and use the other computer. The audio is where you need tools.
Next question.
Jeff Cohen in Miami Beach, Florida is up next. Speaking of MEMS mics, MEMS, thoughts on the claimed directional MEMS microphones from SoundScript, looks like, .ca.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I'll just outline the question a little bit more. This is something I've kind of had in the queue to see if anyone has some insight. This company, I found them because they have a Kickstarter, and I didn't want to show the Kickstarter because it intentionally looks like a toy almost. But as I dug into it, I mean, this company claims to be working on this stuff for 20 years and has this technology they developed that does directional MEMS. And so I'm curious if anyone knows anything about that, how practical that is, how realistic that is.
We long ago somewhere this came up and we tested a mic. I think I actually have one laying around somewhere that we had bought or acquired for the test, and it sounded horrible. Just so you know, like it was tinty and weird, and it picked things up, but it was really clamped down. It was not, there was nothing we could use it for. Like it got sound, but not anything I would use. So it's not this mic, but I do know that we tested this probably 3 or 4 years ago. Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
A lot of small portable consumer devices have MEMS microphones in them. They're popular because of the really small size they can be made at. But yeah, directly out of the microphone, it does not sound good, and it takes a lot of computation and processing on the consumer or portable device to make them sound decent. Like think of microphones inside of cell phones, for example. They do a lot of processing on those signals to be able to get a usable signal out of it. But with something like this, they're essentially making an array of little MEMS microphones in a small box to be able to have essentially be able to simulate directionality, like and be able to change your pickup pattern from cardioid to figure 8 and all that. It's all being done computationally. The microphone itself themselves do not sound good.
Hey, go ahead, Jeff.
And I'll just show real quick, if anyone's curious. This was like an ad on I don't remember Instagram or something, but so this is the Kickstarter product. Again, I'm sure intentionally made to look very cute. This is meant to just I don't know if you can see the scale, but this is plugs into the USB port on the bottom of the microphone, and the byproduct. I mean, if you believe the videos, as Mickey said, I mean, it is not intended to give you what sounds like any of these studio quality mics, but what it is intended to give you, and the videos purport to give you a processed, decent, usable, vlogger video with audio if you're in the middle of the street or something like that. So it's interesting if it's real.
I guess I would just keep coming back to, it's easy to make content or easy to watch content. It is very hard to do both at the same time. And if you're a creator, please take pity on us viewers and just get some get some good tools. Don't try to buy the cheapest thing or the weirdest thing. There's a bunch of tools out there that work pretty well, and just stick with the ones that work well and try not to go too far out of bounds there. Hey, if you're watching this on YouTube and you're not in Mukana, you're missing half the show. If you go to officehours.global/join, you'll start getting emails that'll give you a link to Mukana and Discord. You can ask questions, you can vote on questions, you can talk about the questions, all of those things in Mukana. Ask officehours.global/join. Next question.
And next one comes to us from Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. When recording talent with a slide deck that has videos with sound, how do you record the presentation so that the video sound does not contaminate the talent track?
Go ahead, Jeff.
Trickier for live. Hopefully you can, in that case, get do a double-ended record where you get the talent maybe to record just the mic audio separately. If you're using tools like Riverside, for example, to record, and they are using, in that case, the Riverside screen share functionality, one of the nice things it does is it will record their audio on two separate tracks. So it will record their mic audio separately from their computer screen shared audio, and you will have two separate tracks locally recorded, which is nice, all automatically and seamless from the user.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I'm curious if this is a situation wherein it's just purely recorded and going to go through post-production prior to release, or if this is a live situation that you just so happen to be recording and live, be it like just broadcast or in an in-person event with a PA system. In either situation, if the talent does have to hear the sound from the slide deck, then I'd make sure that they're on in-ear monitors that would, completely isolate things. In a situation where the talent is in a studio, it's all pre-recorded, or even in a strictly broadcast situation. In a live in-person event with a PA system, having them on in-ears means you don't have to blast the audio from the slide deck into the monitor wedges if there are any, and in conjunction with good loudspeaker placement for the PA system, you can minimize the bleed as much as possible. You won't be able to totally get rid of it in that situation. I mean, there are tools to be able to process it to even minimize the amount of bleed. But try just make sure that you have as little of that sound coming back into the presenter's mic. Get them on in-ear monitors.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what the environment is that, as Mickey pointed out, that you're talking about here. If it's a person that's just doing a presentation to be recorded, can I tell you how much I love the Pix 240? And here's one of the things the Pix 240 could do is it could record 4 tracks. 2 tracks are your HDMI output, and up to 2 tracks are your mics. So it could do both of those at the same time, separating out all of those tracks for you as you recorded them. And I used them for presentations for years, specifically for that use, is that we can grab the audio of both of those as you're working there. In a typical professional environment, where we're recording these, we were recording those as 2 entirely separate tracks on different recording devices, so that we don't have to think about that. So it just depends on. But the Pix 240 was always the kind of magic little box that did both of those things for us at the same time. Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I'm just seeing in chat. Roscoe did mention that this production this is a fully just recorded production. That's going to go through post production. So yeah, in that situation, if they absolutely have to hear the audio from the slides, run it through in-ear monitors for them.
And if that audio is connected to a video that you're playing out, I would not use the video from the slide deck. So I would cut to it, and then I would I would cut the video back in post. You're never going to get even with Keynote, you're never going to get perfect frame representation on the output. And so I would always go back to the original source. Next question.
Jack Tivnan in California says, I do online commentary and analysis in the eSports space. I've been having trouble with plosives in my recordings despite using a clamp-on pop filter. I record my audio through a Blu Spark microphone routed through a GoXLR mixer.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I think number one there would be training yourself with improving the mic technique. Training yourself so that you speak with as minimal air pressure from your breath hitting the capsule. That would be number one, because like once you learn that, no matter what mic you're on, even if there's no pop filter, you'd be able to get a nice clean sounding recording. If once you've got that done and you still have issues every now and then, you can get pop filters that do have dual nets on it, not just a single layer of net on the filter. That may help. In addition to that, if you have your filter just 2 or 3 centimeters from the grill of the microphone, try if you're projecting loud enough and you don't need that absolute proximity effect. You can bring that pop filter a bit further away from the grill so that you get even more of an air gap between the pop filter and the grill of the microphone to protect you even more. But number one is microphone technique.
Go ahead, Bill.
100% behind what Mickey says. I'm in front of a large diaphragm condenser right now, and if I did Peter Piper picked, it's all over the place, plosive. If I just say the same thing and go Peter Piper picked, I don't get any of them, and that's just learned behavior to moderate the amount of air that comes out during your P's. You get used to it if you announce for a long time.
And the easiest thing to do, and you'll see that almost everybody on this panel, I think everybody on the panel here is, when I talk to people about how do I avoid popping, the first thing I say is take a channel between your two eyes and just project that out from your face, and don't put a mic in that channel. So this area right here, just keep it. You'll see mine is sitting right on the outer edge of that channel. And when I position a mic, I'm going to grab onto it. If it's in the front like this, I'm going to move it over to the side, and I'm not going to get any pops as long as I'm talking straight across. It's the air pressure. So the air pressure is now not going towards it. Same thing with if you're using a headset mic, I always get it to the edge of the mouth, and then I pull back about a centimeter, and then that's where I put that mic, and it's not going to get any plosives as long as it's in that position. Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas is up next. What place in your production toolkit would this brand new $99 Obsbot Mini Cam Connector with USB-C and Wi-Fi have? And he's got a link to it.
Go, Jason.
Okay, I looked all the way up and down this. My answer is nowhere. This is a really neat toy, and anytime you have $99, wireless and video in the same sentence, no place.
Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I kind of agree. Wireless and video. This works on Wi-Fi 6 using 5 gigahertz or 40 gigahertz, God forbid. Supposedly up to 30 meters, about 100 feet. I would not depend on it. It only works. I think it only works with the Obsbot wireless cameras, PTZ cameras. So, and you have to run their app to run it. So there's a whole lot of requirements to make this work. And I'd worry, like Jason would said, about wireless anything, especially something that's line of sight and that high of frequency in Wi-Fi 6.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I agree with Jason. I mean, taking a look at it here, let's look a little closer. And a little closer. Oh, wait. I see Wi-Fi. Yes, sorry, I agree. Like nowhere.
The fakey response.
Next question.
Next question comes from Kyle Hammond in Chicago, Illinois. Anyone on the panel have hands-on experience with the newish Canon C50 with the XLR handle? I'm curious how the audio would match up with the R6 Mark III and if it is worth the extra $1,000 US difference.
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, so I was on a live shoot down in LA, and the camera operator had a C50 and a C500, and we got into just this back and forth as to how they matched and whatnot. And he was just raving about that camera, how much he loves it. When we compare it down to the R6, you're going to notice that you have proper XLR input. So in this example where we were live, I actually liked the fact that I could bring in pro audio inputs because he had our sound mixer had a Sound Devices, I think it was a 833, and he had the big CL faders and everything, and he was feeding the audio. So he had Electro on the talent, and then the audio went to him and then into that camera, and I was able to pull the feed into the live married together, and it was nice to have proper XLRs on set and not have to deal with mini plugs. And the other nice thing is that you have real time code. So in the opposite scenario, if this was for a record, he would record in his Sound Devices, and now we have pristine, even 32-bit float records, and we could time code sync that stuff back up. If you go with the less expensive camera, you don't have the XLR, you don't have the time code, and you may even have lousy preamps in there. So you want to think about just the camera being scratch audio, and then your proper recorder having the full meal deal, unless you're going live. And then you could choose alternate routes. I could have had him feed me. Actually, we did do this. We had Dante as a backup just in case. So we had the audio routed that way too, but there could have been introduced latency. So it's nice to always have a backup just in case something goes wrong. So in this scenario, we had multiple paths.
Next question.
Zach Jeffers in Spokane, Washington is next. If bonding multiple internet connections through a bonding router plus service, much like Peplink's offerings, it adds processing latency latency on the server end. How does that affect things in practical use like Zoom or productions?
Go, Nikki.
So yeah, with the bonding with Peplink devices, processing is negligible. It's going to be sub-millisecond. What you have to watch out for is the latency from your different WAN connections with the Peplink modem going to wherever your SpeedFusion hub server is. So if that's just nearby, if it's just a couple of blocks down in your office, that latency will be very, very low, like sub 100 millisecond most likely. If your SpeedFusion hub server is, say, in AWS across the country, or in my case, when we use SpeedFusion, we're using the Hong Kong servers usually. That's about anywhere from 30 to 70 milliseconds, depending on what our WAN connections are like. And from that SpeedFusion hub, going to, say, Zoom. So those are two additional hops that you have to take into account in terms of the latency, but the actual processing in the box itself, as well as on the SpeedFusion server, that's negligible.
Next question.
Next question comes to us from Kyle Nesta in Philadelphia, looking for rigging advice in an insert studio. The drop ceiling height is 9 foot high. The drywall perimeter is 8.5 feet high. I've got light gear on the drop ceiling now, but can't add a hard grid. Our Autopoles are similar. My next logical step.
I got Courtney.
Well, Autopoles are going to have to go into, well, you're not going to attach them to the drop ceiling, so you're going to have to take out a drop ceiling panel and go all the way to the hard ceiling above the drop ceiling if you're going to put an Autopole in, or between two of the walls. Another thing you might think about doing is take a few of the panels out of the drop ceiling and go in and see where that drop ceiling is anchored. They have frames that hang on wires on that drop ceiling, and then just support a couple of crossbars, a couple of pipes, 2-inch pipes, above the drop ceiling, and then you can set 2 or 3 in primary places, and then when you need to mount a light, you just pop out a ceiling panel and go ahead and mount to that bar that you've mounted up there that's supported off the same supports that drop ceiling frame is supported off of.
Go, Mickey.
With something like this, if it is just a temporary install, then Autopoles may be a good solution for that. They're easy to set up and easy to take down. If this is going to be something permanent, I would not resort to Autopoles, I would actually build a grid either hung from the ceiling or being supported from below that is held a lot more securely than just friction, because Autopoles just rely on friction.
Good, Bill?
I'm using an Autopole system right now. As fact, this is it's over my head, and it can be very, very functional. But as you can see, it can get also very complicated. And if you're paying retail for the Autopoles, it is a solution if you can't use grids to get things overhead. I have an entire grid basically built out of Autopoles up there. So if you have the budget for it, it can be a very useful technique, but it does run into some money.
And also, just know that the drop ceiling, depending on how the drop ceiling's been installed, and you have to look at it above it to see what it is, can hold a lot more weight than you think. Here's one that I built. We couldn't, to your point, we couldn't put a grid in here. It was too low. We barely could fit this in, and we attached all of these with scissor clips. Now, we did be careful of putting multiple points on them and everything else, but it's a fair number of lights into that area. It was built to the drop ceiling was definitely built to spec, so every other one had wires going to this, driven into the ceiling. So it was a very stiff drop ceiling, and so that made it easier. But we were able to put a lot of lights on it. So you can with scissor clips do a lot. You do have to be careful, and you have to make sure that it was, depending on how it was built. If it doesn't have very many supports, then it won't work. Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. Up next, Netflix has an incredible behind-the-scenes doc on the making of the film Ray Kelly with George Clooney and Adam Sandler. What's your standard doc on how to make a film or video?
I don't know if I have a standard doc. I mean, I just watch a lot of things like CinemaSticks, and there's a couple other ones that we watch behind the scenes. I'm not sure. I like watching I buy a lot of movies on Apple TV because of all the extras. So it's all the DVD extras that you used to have are all available on Apple TV, and oftentimes more than we would see in the normal DVD. And so I buy a lot of my probably 600 movies on Apple TV. It also gets better because if there's 3D or 4K or whatever it is, they automatically update all the time. So you get those as well. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I'd say one of the pre-prepared sort of documentary style behind the scenes pieces or series that I quite enjoyed, especially starting out, was the ones from Peter Jackson in making The Hobbit as well as Lord of the Rings. It was a series of videos I know perhaps
I think they ended up in all the extended DVDs. I think all of the whole series got put back in.
They're made for your home viewers, your standard consumers, but they go a little more in depth than most. So those are probably good to look at. Peter Jackson also had a couple on who's that, the monster gorilla climbing Empire State Building?
King Kong.
I'm blanking. King Kong. On King Kong, what's his face? Peter Jackson also had a bunch of good ones on those. But for the most part nowadays, I love listening to podcasts about filmmaking. There's a podcast from Roger Deakins and his wife called Team Deakins. That's really good. They talk to all sorts of crew members, from other cinematographers to editors to sound designers, sound mixers, and they go quite really in depth. Another one, I'm a sound guy, so I like a bunch of podcasts about sound. Tone Benders talks to really high end sound designers, and they go quite deep into psychology on how they approach their sound design and all that, and how they try to pull emotions out of the audience. Location Sound Podcast is also a good one. I'm looking at my Apple Podcast right now. Production Experts is sort of mix between music engineering and also post-production sound engineering. So that's another good one. But yeah, those are some of the ones I listen to. 20,000 Hertz. I know the community loves that. It's not strictly about filmmaking and video making, but it starts to get you thinking about sound. Again, sound person. So that's what I listen to a lot.
The 20,000 Hertz did a whole episode on just a little bloop bloop at the end of TikToks. It was an entire you realize a lot of thought went into that. Also think about Criterion has the old Criterion releases. I don't know where they are now, but the Traffic one and Armageddon were both just packed full of behind the scenes. Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
I considered it behind the scenes. It's kind of an odd choice, but there's a film that won an Academy Award in the small category called Searching for Sugarman. And it's really a fascinating thing because it talks about the behind the scenes record industry and how somebody became a huge star while being completely unknown in the U.S., a massive star in his home country. And it's just about the behind the scenes of how the music business does or doesn't work.
Searching for Sugarman, he wasn't a massive star in his own country. He was a massive star in South Africa, right? Like that
right, exactly. Huge star in South Africa, completely unknown in the U.S.
Yeah. It's an incredible documentary, by the way. You should definitely watch it. Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, if you're interested in visual effects, which almost all films have these days, there's a good one on the visual effects breakdown of Titanic, because it was one of the first films out there to use a whole lot of visual effects to achieve a lot of that, to meld the practical effects with the visual effects. So that's really interesting. And all visual effects companies do what they call a visual effects breakdown. And they'll create those because they're applying for visual effects awards during award season. And it'll break down each shot that is a complex shot, and it'll show you all the layers as they pop in. And it gives you a nice understanding of all the time and work that went into just creating that one shot that goes by in 3/4 of a second or 4 seconds, and let you know that there are 21 elements that were composited into that scene because it adds them one at a time. And that visual effects breakdown. So just search for whatever film that you're interested in and type VFX breakdown, and you'll probably find a YouTube of that reel that was submitted for visual effects awards, which breaks down a lot of the complex visual effects shots.
Next question.
Next one comes from Jeff Cohen in Miami Beach, Florida, here on the panel. Interview guests frequently push back on wearing headphones, in-ears, and so forth. Are we doing a disservice by not using such well-hidden in-ears? We appear to not be wearing headphones.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, so we mentioned, someone mentioned in-ears before, and I deal with a lot of editing of remote interviews, and this is a constant problem. And I think about this, everyone here, I just switched mine, but everyone here at first glance appears not to be wearing any kind of headphones. And guests see this on podcasts when everyone's in studio, so perhaps it's less of an issue and no one's wearing headphones because they're having a discussion there. And then the byproduct is I work really hard to get rid of all the problems they created, and the end result sounds as best as it can. So that also reaffirms, see, I didn't need headphones. So I wonder about this, should we as the community kind of be doing more to demonstrate and advocate that, yes, it does make a difference when you don't have open speakers going back into the mics.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, just in terms of appearance and, as people thinking that we're not wearing any headphones or in-ears, something I learned from Alex many years ago is when coming into a meeting with clients or other people or talent, I would start off with my in-ears dangling here, and I'd turn on my camera and then start with this, just so that they can see that. And that's something that Alex mentioned a couple years ago. Now, as you mentioned, like when it's an in-person thing, talent is in the studio, that's a non-issue because, like, say, even if it were an insert or a live hit, we would just not provide any other option but to use these to hear the people that you're talking to. But when it's with remote guests, that certainly can be trickier, and a lot of from an A1's perspective, a lot of there's a lot of reliance on the producer and the relationship of the producer with the talent, and how much the producer can nudge or push the talent. If the talent is willing to play ball, then they'll get a much better appearance on whatever programming they'll show up in. But if the talent doesn't want to play, then and the producer isn't willing to push, then there's only so much you can do.
Yeah, it also depends on how often we get to work with the same talent, we find that, a lot of times if part of what we do, a little bit of the police interrogation technique. Well, we're providing these for everybody else, so you're going to stand out if you do that. So we just want you to know that you can put it over ears, but there's 3 other people on the panel, and none of them are going to have that, and they're going to look a lot better than you do. And so we just want to make sure you know that. So that there's a little bit of and now we sometimes have to say that to everybody, so it's just to pull them all in. But the idea. I mean, there's a lot of other people that do it a lot of different ways. I think that we never want to mistake someone being really popular for the fact that they're doing everything right. They happen to be very popular because they did something right. They're doing something really well. It doesn't mean they're doing everything well. And so we don't want to get caught up in it. We should copy everything a person who's doing, really well is doing. They happen to be in the right place at the right time or do the right thing. They're doing something really well, but it's overcoming all the other deficiencies that they have that they could make it better if they wanted to. So we don't want to copy too much. I think that right now, I do think that for the most part, on an average, if you look at the average quality, we're very competitive with almost anything else on air at the moment. I mean, when I look at stuff on Sunday morning interviews, I'm pretty embarrassed for the folks on broadcast, of how they look and oftentimes how they sound, just because everything's just it's good enough for now. Next question.
Kyle Nesta in Philadelphia is in with us, and preferred fixtures for lighting seamless background paper in a tight insert studio. I'm using a MixPanel 60 as an uplight now, but I want better, wider coverage with remote control capability, either an app or DMX.
I go, Jason.
Here's the quick abstract. You need a good source, and it needs to be on either side. So I would say that GVM will allow Ethernet and will do DMX, and then you need a side thing that will spread the light and make it really tall, and you need one of those on either side.
Go ahead, Courtney.
It depends on whether you want even lighting or if you want some accent lighting. If you want accent lighting, look for a Lico light like this. I don't know if this one's controllable, but it's RGBW 4-leaf shutter, so that you can project a little slash of light or a gobo or some type of effect on the background to break it up. So get a Lico in addition to the other light.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Precisely what Courtney said. It depends on what type of what quality of light you're looking for. Are you looking for a softer light, or are you looking for maybe something that can give a harder highlight wherever you plan to aim that light? Licos or fixtures with Fresnel lenses on it will give you a harder light as opposed to something that's a panel. If it's a really, really tight space, then you might want to consider fabric lights. Westcott, their flex light, as well as Aladdin has fabric lights that are pretty much industry standard. You see them everywhere. I would go with those if you're very, very tight with the space. They're very thin, but those tend to be softer lighting. There's softer lights coming out of those fixtures.
Good guy.
Yeah, you say it's a tight space, so that takes out a lot of options, because on bigger sets, you could get that separation where you could light that background individually without having it spill onto the talent. So you might want to also be thinking about flags and things like that, because you're going to contaminate your talent. One of the ones that I saw recently that we rented on this shoot that I was just amazed with was the 5-foot dome from Aperture. So this thing makes lighting a background like that nice and even and flawless. And then as far as the MixPanel 60 versus an Aperture, I just hooked up the Amaran app to a Stream Deck Plus with the dials. So I put my fabric light, the F22 from Aperture or Amaran, on one of the dials, and it's so cool now. I can just walk up into that set and I could just say key light, fill light. I even named them key light, fill light, backlight, background light, and I can touch them and I can control them with that Stream Deck. So instead of DMX, you might want to just consider the Aperture line, because their app is fabulous.
Thank you to everybody who asked all of those questions throughout the hour. So every day we've done this 2,087 times in a row, and every day we get a bunch of questions. So great work. Also, thanks to the panel. We can't do this without you. A great conversation. We are just a reminder. We're shifting the format next week. So this will be truly an audio day on Wednesday. So we're really looking for audio questions next Wednesday. So if you're watching now, think about that. Also on Friday, we're going to be doing, we're going to be having open questions in a larger panel. So take a look at that as well. This next Friday and this Friday, hopefully. But we will be, our daily shows will move into the evenings on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. So please note that we'll still be meeting on the weekend. So the format's changing a little bit as we go into next week. So stay tuned for that. And if you want more information about that, come on Sunday. We can discuss it more. And thanks to the incredible team on the back end that's constantly making this possible. It's a small village that gets put together to make this possible, and it's incredible that we've been able to do it this long. If the Tall Traversal, if we had done this in person, we would have traveled 26,000 miles. That's 46,000 kilometers. That is 209 million bananas for scale. All right, let's go and jump into after hours. All righty. Off to the meetings.
Off to the other stuff.
Have a good day.